no siblings.
They
fight all day.
Hey there, it's Jordan with Status Coup. I am in West Virginia, Appalachia to be exact, and we are continuing our economic hellscape reporting tour focused on inflation, outrageous prices across the board. We were just in Ohio, did an interview with, unfortunately, a houseless individual that is increasing now in many cities across the country. People that can't afford rent and now are essentially homeless. So that's up on the channel, that interview. Really, don't watch without a tissue. I had a hard time holding back emotions myself. We also have covered protests encampments in Philadelphia, a protest encampment with tents that has formed at a low-income housing complex. So that's up on the channel. So there's a lot of great content. We've been in Pennsylvania, Ohio, now we're in West Virginia, and we're going to be in West Virginia for a couple days. I think today is, I don't even know, the fifth, day 5 of this trip. We're going for a few more days, and I'm in West Virginia, joined by Katie and Melanie, the home of President Mansion, to be exact, but we won't get into him right now. So yeah, I'm glad we could talk. I know that West Virginia, I've seen different lists, but I think it's either the...
It's okay. It is called Live View.
Yeah. Can we live?
I don't need to start over. Yeah. Oh, good. Sorry about that. Yeah, I was going to ask because you were talking about your husband got a raise, but a lot of people have gotten raises and hasn't done much because the prices keep going up. So has the raise...
His raise did not match inflation. He only got a 5% raise, and that was the first raise he's gotten since the beginning of the pandemic. So it definitely doesn't put us back to the financial position we were in before the pandemic. It's pretty frustrating.
Yeah. And Melanie, I know you've lived here for a long time.
Yeah, I've been here for 20 years.
Yeah. And you have a similar story in terms of, the pandemic and inflation. Have things gotten a little tougher?
Oh yeah, we have 5 children as well, very diverse family. Thankfully, my son is special needs, and we were able to get approved for services for him, which in turn provides additional income for the house, which helps so I can stay home and still be a mom.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of special needs, you got 4 other kids.
Yeah.
I mean, that stuff's not cheap
No.
unless you're getting help. Can you kind of talk about kind of juggling 5 kids on top of special needs, obviously all the other bills?
Yeah.
Have you had to kind of sacrifice some things that you normally would have been able to enjoy?
Oh yeah, this year our youngest, he decided he was going to play sports and do band, and you don't want to tell your kids no. Like, this poor kid's caught in the shaft forever because he is the youngest. So it's like, all right, so we went to see family. We ended up staying with my mom instead of getting a place. We ate at her house, instead of eating out. Like, I know to some people this is like, oh, they went away on vacation or whatever, but my mom's 70. You have to keep those ties and whatnot. And then at home, we've been going to parks and playing, going to, the river, swimming, just the free stuff. West Virginia's beautiful, and thankfully we have these opportunities that, you can go out and do stuff as a family for free.
Mm-hmm. And it's pretty interesting because you hear from the politicians, Biden has said this is a historic economic recovery, citing low unemployment and GDP number is good and the stock market is good. I don't know, I'm going around it. It seems historically crappy for most people.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk about when you hear those things? And the media they talk about inflation, but at the same time they push these numbers.
I think it's really obvious that they're not comparing apples to oranges. Like, when you look at the CPI and how they're calculating it, like, they're swapping out ground beef for steak, and like, it's just, you might still be able to get that food, but it's a lower quality and it's not available. And like, for us, some of the things that maybe aren't included in those calculations are like medical costs. My 3-year-old had to have heart surgery on a congenital heart defect this year, and my husband's insurance out-of-pocket amount went up. It almost doubled from I think it was like $4,000 and now it's $8,000. So
Deductible?
yeah, for our out-of-pocket max.
Jeez.
So because his surgery costs, we're not even sure how much it is yet, but it's probably between $50,000 and $100,000. We're waiting for the bill to come in. It's going to totally max out our out-of-pocket, and we were planning to use that HSA money that we have, because it's a high deductible account, the health savings account, for my daughter's speech therapy, because her therapist is amazing but doesn't take insurance, which is why I started working. And we now can't use that money for my daughter, and we were really excited because we had something here in West Virginia called the Hope Scholarship, which was an ESA program that was going to help families like mine that have special needs kids to pay for speech therapy, and like, you know, maybe they're not a good fit for a full school day, so you can have that flexibility for them. Well, they took that away literally the day that my son had his heart surgery. There was a hearing for it, and the judge ruled it unconstitutional and put a stay on it. And so now we don't have the Hope Scholarship to help with my daughter's speech therapy, which last year cost us $10,000. Plus my son's health stuff, the cost of that almost pretty much doubled because of the out-of-pocket max. And there's nobody there that's helping families that are struggling with that. And it's not included in their like calculations.
Right.
For like how much is health costing. Like one of my kids had a Lyme disease test and it cost $500. Like it's crazy.
How's your son doing after surgery?
He's doing much better. So hopefully we don't have to worry about that anymore. But it was really stressful.
I have to imagine if you're dealing with a son who needs a really serious surgery. You mentioned your other child had needs. It's
Yeah.
pretty tough on your mental health.
It is, and like I don't think people realize that when you live in a state where even our educational system, we fight with Mississippi every year on who's last on educational outcomes. We live in the best school district in the state, and they graduate kids with a 50% literacy rate. It's like, it's unbelievable.
And that's the best one?
That's the best
Yeah.
county in the state, 50% literacy rate. I went to public school in New York, and I looked it up to see what my school that I went to was, and they're a 90% literacy rate, and they're like middle of the pack in New York State. It's like, it's shocking that that's considered acceptable, and they're taking away the educational choice opportunities that our legislator tried to give us 2 years ago. And like we had planned on that money for my daughter, and with less than like only 4 weeks left till the school year started, they took it away. It's really frustrating.
And you know, I don't know if you guys are paying attention during the 2020 Democratic primary, but there's all this talk, oh no, you can't take away the sacred private health insurance. People love their private health insurance. I mean, polls don't show that, but you're talking about, I mean, this is like a gigantic maze just to get.
And like I'm self-employed, so when I work part-time to pay for my daughters, I take contract work, and I can't afford Obamacare. Like we tried to look at that as an alternative for my family, and it costs way more than my husband's employer-based one. And there's not really any like financial help for families like mine. We fall in the crack because like we make just enough to not be able to get any kind of like government assistance. So we don't make enough to be able to afford it, but we make too much to be able to get help. And it's that like you fall right in the crack there, and it's really hard, especially when you have kids that have special needs and you're trying to pay for therapies, and the regular school system isn't very flexible for kids like that. Like, you know, I can get in trouble for truancy if I pull my daughter out to go to her special therapist, because from their perspective, they offer speech therapy, but they don't offer the type of therapy she needs, which is she has a motor neurological problem, not a typical childhood speech delay. So it's frustrating because you have to navigate these crazy mazes of all the time just to try to do what's best for your children.
I can tell you, not to make it about me, but when I was younger, I was in speech, occupational therapy, resource room. From first to third grade, I was in a self-contained class with 5 kids. I hope my mother's not watching. I don't think that was necessary, but I did have I had a learning disability, and I was very fortunate. You know, my dad made decent money when I was. There was not almost $5 a gallon of gas.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have all that, I would not be on camera right now speaking. So it is
Makes a huge difference.
very, very crucial. having special needs, it doesn't mean you're not smart. I actually, to be modest, was probably smarter than most kids in my class. I just was lost with directions and auditory processing and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm very visual, but I had that help, but a lot of people are struggling to get that help.
Especially in West Virginia, like
Yeah.
Melanie can tell you more about having to fight that, but it's hard.
Yeah, she was talking about truancy. I just had court for my son having truancy issues.
Really?
Yeah. I want to cry.
Sorry.
He was bullied nonstop. He looks like your typical kid, but he has an MI, so he's delayed. Everybody's his friend. He has a hard time, like, understanding, you know, like, oh, that's not right. Like, they're being mean to me. So I wrote notes to the school or whatever. This is, you know, he's not coming to school because he's refusing to come to the school. We just got approved for a charter school, which, you know, might be a possibility, but they only have 9th grade right now, and because he's on the spectrum, you can't put him into a school not knowing if they're going to have the following grades. Like, you need consistency. But West Virginia is very put down of the Hope Scholarship and our charter schools because they're claiming it's taking money from the federal education. But at the same time, they're not looking at our kids who are going to benefit outside of those big classrooms and those big settings. Mm-hmm. He's reading at a kindergarten level, a freshman in high school.
And families like in West Virginia, we can't afford private school.
No.
Private school here is very expensive. Yeah. And the attitude towards families like ours that just want to do what's best for our children is, you know, you should just go to these schools that are frankly like disturbingly bad with the huge classroom sizes. All the kids are like in trailers. There's 25 or 30 kids in the classroom. The special education families have to fight to get their IEPs followed. And now that there's opportunities like the charter school, their classroom will have less than 20 kids in a class. It's the first year they're starting up. And there are families who are afraid to tell other people that their kids are going to go there because the parents get bullied so badly but we're just trying to do what's best for our kids.
Well, that federal government funding is providing a 50% literacy rate.
Well, they get to keep that money. So like, it's like you get looked down on, but for the charter school or the Hope Scholarship, you get like 50% or less of the money. We only get the state portion of it to help our children's education. And the county school gets to keep the federal and the county levy portion that our children no longer get to benefit from because they're not at that school. Right. So they're getting more money per kid and getting to relieve overcrowding in the classrooms. And it helps families that can't afford to go to private school, because that's what people will say to you if you're like, well, my child's struggling, you know, their zip code assigned school is just not working, they're getting bullied, or they aren't offering the services my child needs. People will say, well, then just send your kid to private school, but you don't deserve to have that money towards your child. And it's like, well, it's nice that you have the privilege that you can afford to go to private school, but my child is still hurting and I can't afford to send 4 kids to private school. Right. And they'll say nasty things like, well, then don't have so many kids. And it's like, right, so the kid doesn't deserve to exist because you think that they should have a horrible educational experience and then not want to stay in West Virginia. Like, this state is beautiful. It's wonderful. And if we had better education here, then more families would want to stay and more businesses would come here. Mm-hmm. But they do the same thing over and over again. And
you know, it's very sad. Interesting to me you say that, not to get into not to get into an abortion debate, but don't have more kids, but these are the pro-lifers. So it seems that they're pro-life to have the child, but then when the child's out, you know, it's up to you, we're not going to help you.
Well, these are the kids that are going to be, they're the ones that are going to be paying Social Security benefits and Medicare benefits. They're the kids that are going to be working to, working in the nursing homes to take care of us. They're going to be the ones that are being nurses and that are going to be, working at the gas station. These kids, they're the future. And if there's more of us than there are of them, then there's nobody to take care of us when we get older.
Right.
Or the people who are older now. And in 10 years, my kids are going to be the working class that are helping them. It's the attitude that looks down on them is very sad to me.
Let me ask you, one of the few good things I'd say Biden did was the child tax credit.
That was amazing.
For some families, it was a couple thousand a month, depending on how many children you have. They say it cut poverty in half, temporarily. We know Manchin was one of the main impediments to that being extended. Did that help both of you? And if you got it, and once it got pulled away, I assume it made things even more difficult.
Yeah, we received it, and it was nice because we were able to keep up on our bills and catch up on some of our other bills that we had and whatnot. And my daughter, she was her freshman year, we went and got her a homecoming dress, and it wasn't like, oh, we can't afford that, So that was really nice to walk in and for once be like, hey, we don't have to look at the bank account before we walk in here. Like, we know we can get you something you deserve.
Right.
She has 4 brothers. She deserves a little spoiling every now and then.
It's kind of infuriating. I think we just increased the Pentagon budget to $830 billion. I'm not saying not to have a military, but
Yeah.
they kind of gave you all crumbs for a year. And for whatever reason of Manchin, they pull that. So they easily have money for the military-industrial complex, but not enough to permanently end poverty when they can. They could also permanently end homelessness. There's plenty of money for that.
We saved that money. We saved a lot of it to help pay for my daughter's speech therapy, my son's surgery, and then also that allowed us to send my oldest child to a private pre-K last year. But what's really infuriating for me is it feels like I look around and the only people who are prospering right now is the government. Like our community is taking money from, I think, the American Rescue Plan, and they're building a BMX track, they're building a brand new pool. They're still not doing their basic function of maintaining the roads. I'm sure you've probably noticed the roads here are in despicable shape. It's just, we drive preschool, and like 2 of the roads that we drive on a preschool are literally collapsing into the side of the mountain. They go down to 1 lane because you can't, but they haven't been repaired in the 5 years we've been here. They might patch them, but they don't actually fix the problem.
That's good to have collapsing roads on a mountain.
But they can build
Yeah.
brand new municipal pools with lots of like water slides and BMX tracks, but they can't do the basic function. And it's almost like it's a slap in your face because I'm trying to make sure I'm underneath my grocery budget. Our credit card bill for household and groceries has pretty much doubled since before the pandemic, and I'm doing everything differently. Like we're not buying the same food that we used to, and we're buying most of our stuff bulk, like direct from local farmers now, because we can't afford to just the convenience of walking into the grocery store and buying chicken. We have to buy it in bulk and put it in the freezer to save money and then have it throughout the year, because that's the only way that we can really afford to buy the groceries we used to. Hi, Ruth.
There you go.
This is my daughter, Ruth.
Hey, Ruth. Let me ask you also, West Virginia, the governor's now talking about a personal tax cut. I have a feeling a lot of that's going to go to his donors, but putting that aside, obviously it doesn't have as high of taxes as a place like New York or New Jersey, but with inflation, have you seen any difference in your taxes, property tax, other taxes? Because other people I'm talking to have told me they've seen their taxes go up a bit.
Ours is included in our mortgage, so thankfully, we don't really see much of an influx. But so next year, our mortgage will probably go up because that's how it seems to work. Is
Yeah.
we make up for it the following year if they have to pay extra.
Gotcha.
Mostly what we've seen is not the taxes have gone up a little bit, but it's the municipal bills that have gone up. Our water bill has doubled. and our
And the water in West Virginia is not exactly.
My sewage bill tripled.
I was just gonna say our Deckers Creek, like
Yeah.
our local public like sewer, which you get no choice in. They're the only provider. Ours has gone up double in the last 2 years, maybe even a year, because I don't know why. There's no explanation. The price just goes up.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's the utility bills have really risen.
I'll give you the reason. Because they're cutting taxes for corporations and wealthy people, and they're diverting those lost costs to you.
Yeah. However, I mean, I don't know. Like the local district, it's run by a private something or other, and it's just like I thought that we had to have some buy-in when there was raises on public utilities, and for some reason you just don't seem to get like a notification, or you think, oh, it's not that much, and then it's a lot.
Right.
You know, $100 more a month in utility bills is not an insignificant amount of money for, you know, that's a week of speech therapy for my daughter. That's a lot of money for a family with 4 kids.
And let me ask you, 5 kids, 4 kids, that's a lot of driving around.
Yes.
If you gas, they're cheering on CNN that it's down to $4.50 or something. It was closer to $5. I don't know what it's been like in
Yeah.
West Virginia, but can you talk about the gas prices in terms of? I'm sure you're driving quite a bit to
Oh, yeah.
take your kids places.
Yeah, especially when you're trying to go to free places. So you might drive a little farther to go to the state park, so you don't have to spend $20 to get into the pool.
Yeah.
It adds up quick, and my husband and I have been trying to go fewer places, and we thought about going down to 1 car, but it would be more expensive because our minivan, if he drove that to work, it could cost just as much anyway. So I don't know. I know our gas expenses have basically doubled since all this inflation started, and it's a big cut in the budget.
Yeah, I have the little maroon car out there, Chevy Cruze. So when I first got it, so we used part of the child tax credit to get me the car. I didn't have my license till a year ago. So I just started driving, just got this little car. We were putting premium gas in it for $50, filling up the tank for $50. Now it's costing me like $70 with the cheap gas to fill it up one time. And we're running back and forth to sports. My special needs son, he plays ball out at Mylan Park, which is clear across town. And then I have physical therapy out that way, and it's a lot of running back and forth and stuff.
We cut out a lot of our organized sports because of that. My children used to do swim lessons, and we can't afford to drive them. We can't afford $100 for swim lessons. So we just go and try to do, sports together instead, because it costs too much to sign them up for dancing or swim lessons, that kind of thing. It's so expensive.
And how does it make you feel when you see these fossil fuel companies are making record profits? It doesn't seem to me that they're just passing the costs off to the customer. I think there's price gouging clearly going on.
Oh,
I
yeah.
couldn't say about that, but I feel like all of this government and large corporations, they're hurting people that are trying to just get by, and they're the ones who are benefiting. And I think they're kind of in cahoots with each other, to be honest with you. The politicians are like, oh, let's move this money over to my friends, and that's why we only have like 4 different companies that make gasoline, because those are the ones that are their buddies, and it makes it really hard to have anybody that comes in and can go at a lower price to help families like ours.
And what are your thoughts on those oil companies? It's not just oil companies.
Yeah, no,
A lot of these companies are making record profits, but somehow they say, well, we have to increase prices.
Oh no, I constantly think about the people who are lining their pockets and stuff, and I was thinking they're making billions of dollars while we're scraping the cup holders to get gas, And I'm just like, all right, like they could hold off on their price increase and quit lining their pockets for a month and still be very well off in those billions of dollar range. But no, they want to keep, pushing the prices and pushing the prices.
It's groceries too, like Kroger. They had record profits during the pandemic, and we can't afford to shop at Kroger anymore. Like, we just can't. I go there and it's twice as much as it used to be, and it's twice as much as if I go to Walmart or Aldi's. So we've totally changed our buying habits based on the cost of groceries.
It actually came out, I don't want to get the number wrong, but I think 2 out of 10 Kroger workers were homeless in California.
That's terrible.
I might have the number wrong, but it was something like 1 or 2 out of 10 Kroger workers working full time were homeless.
Well, and that,
You bring that up. I think out in California they try to unionize. They hurry up and shut down 15 Krogers the next day.
Yep.
what?
Yeah, he was just saying the workers tried to unionize and they shut down 15 of them. Pretty quickly, that just happened with Chipotle in Maine. Workers tried to unionize and they shut down that location. So
Even like all of the pandemic policies, they were harmful to the working class because they were created by people who can be laptop workers, right? People who make enough money and they're not working in a factory like my husband. My husband works in an aluminum factory. He has to be at work and actually produce something. And these other people that are making all these policies, they have the privilege to be able to be home and working. And then they're creating all of these policies that make it so difficult for like the people who work the front line at the gas station and the grocery store and all of that. Those people are being harmed. And it's very frustrating to see that it's, oh, well, I can stay home and do this. Well, it's lucky you have the privilege of being able to do that. My husband had to go to work every day and get exposed. And he didn't get any help or anything like that because he's not a laptop worker, and it was very frustrating.
and we don't even have paid sick leave.
Right.
So they're trying to rush people. Oh, I was just saying, somebody tweeted that the McDonald's manager get into work, that they had COVID.
Yep, because they have to work.
Get here or you're fired.
Yeah.
They have to work, and if without those people, we wouldn't have been able to go and pick up, get gas to get to work and stuff during the pandemic. Like all of those policies were so very driven by people who were privileged enough to be able to sit on their couch and work from a laptop. It's aggravating.
Right. And let me ask you, I hear the media, Manchin says this. Well, we have to say no to these things because I represent West Virginia and they don't want these things like paid sick leave or the child tax credit. And, Trump won by 40 points. I don't know. I mean, I'm not from here, but I know a little history. West Virginia has a populist history. It was a long-time Democratic state until like 15 years ago. Unions were once a thing here. Seems to me, left, right, maybe they disagree on some social issues, but economically, I think even more conservative people, these economic policies are fairly popular in terms of relief. But Manchin has said he can't vote for them because I can't explain it to the people of West Virginia. I'm not sure what he can explain in terms of paid sick leave, the child tax credit, some new climate policies. Coal is a dying industry here. Can you kind of talk about, is that accurate that West Virginians don't want these things?
I don't see why anybody wouldn't want paid sick leave or whatever. Like she was saying, her husband worked all through the pandemic. Mine did as well. I have adrenal insufficiency. At that point in time, I was just diagnosed, and I was at the hospital every single month because of an adrenal crisis. If I would have got sick, I could have died, And could you imagine, if him being able to get, FMLA or paid sick leave or something like that? That would have been wonderful. Thankfully, he does work for a good company. It's a small company. His boss is very accommodating, so when I was at the hospital, he's able to leave and come with me. Mm-hmm. But we would have been
Screwed.
Yeah.
That's how we felt too. I have never felt such fear as I felt during the pandemic in terms of just worrying about, are we going to make it through this financially? Can we, what can we do? What if my husband gets sick? What if, because I hadn't worked at that point in 2 years, even though I'm an engineer, I could go back to work. But it's people frown upon you if you leave the workforce to be with your kids and then come back in. It can be hard to get a job.
And who's going to watch your kids?
I took a full-time job during the first summer of the pandemic because her speech therapy cost so much money. We spent $10,000 in speech therapy. And my job, almost all, people would say, oh, you're working now, you can afford things. It did nothing for our lifestyle because I might have made, $90,000. And then $10,000 of that after tax went to her speech therapy. Probably $25,000 of that went to taxes. $35,000 went to childcare. So there's nothing left after all that money to pay for anything lifestyle-wise. It's all going towards those expenses. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of families like ours with women that are trying to go back to work, and instead of being able to work full-time, they can't afford the childcare. I know one family that she's working at night and she's not getting to spend time with her kids and her husband at the same time because he gets home from work. She goes to work at night so that they can afford just to maintain their expenses. They pay their mortgage and their, their household goods. And there's a lot more families that are talking about having to do that, especially here in West Virginia. And we live in a very expensive city, comparably to the rest of West Virginia. And that makes it very hard to maintain, even the low level of lifestyle that you might be at with all of this inflation.
The gas prices will go down at some point. Food prices will go down at some point. But it's not like once inflation ends, that ends the economic struggle here, because the state's not giving you much help. The federal government's not giving you much help. All these good programs seem to expire after a year. So it's not like there's a magical light at the end of the tunnel.
They created the problem because they were trying to shunt money to their friends. And so like the tax stimulus money that we got from the government was such a tiny portion of the money that they spent.
Oh, yeah.
And the rest of it goes to their buddies at the corporations or whatever. And we knew the inflation was coming. My husband really likes to watch economics, and he was watching the treasury account at the Federal Reserve Bank, so he could see there was a lot of money in there that hadn't been spent yet, so the inflation wasn't going to hit yet. They held on to that for like six or 12 months before they started releasing it. And so we had already been buying like non-perishable household goods and things in bulk to prepare for it and store, because that's probably, like, if you don't have a lot of money to invest in gold or whatever, that's probably the easiest way to prepare for inflation. But now we're getting to the point where we're getting through those supplies and we're having to buy at the higher prices. And it's frustrating because they acted like they were so surprised it was inflating, but when my husband looked at the monetary supply, he's like, well, it went up like 30%, so why are they surprised? And all that money didn't go to the people. Most of it went to
Buying up assets, corporations.
Yeah, even the Federal Reserve, right? They're not supposed to buy like stock in companies, and they did. That's where a lot of that money came from.
Yeah.
So they're buying stock in, like, oh, my brother-in-law owns this company and he's got 50% of their stock. I'm going to go use the Federal Reserve, our money, to buy and help his brother-in-law. And it's beyond frustrating.
And what have you seen? I know you do some stuff with the food pantry. Have you seen an increase in needs there?
We have seen an increase in people that come through, and then I also deliver, and they've added more people to my route to deliver to. And some of these people are, the level of poverty is really sad, like, that they're living in. I feel so blessed to have a home, a clean home, where I know I have my electricity and whatnot. A couple of the families, they live in trailers that are run down, or their outsides are plywood.
Jeez.
Like,
No insulation.
Yeah.
And it's spoiling it.
And
Yeah.
and that's literally like a mile from some of the most rich areas of our city. Like, and those people, they have no idea. They have no idea the level of poverty that's a mile from their house. Because my husband and I have done some, like, we first moved here, we had extra furniture and stuff, and we posted it for free on Facebook. And we went to a couple houses that were like half a mile from our house, and I was like, I could not believe there were people living there. And we were like, what could we do to help these people? We found out about Pantry Plus, but it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
West Virginia, I feel like sometimes people focus on the race aspect of poverty, but here in West Virginia, it's not race, it's like class. There's a class of people here, regardless of their race, that are just abject poverty that you could not imagine unless you've seen it. It's heartbreaking. It's terrible.
And I hate to make it, I'm not trying to make this about Manchin, so it's not just him, but don't you have, in most jobs, you have to have results to keep your job. He's been senator, Capito too, I think since the 2000s. The poverty has only gotten worse here. I mean, they're not responsible for it all, but it's just amazing to me that these are the politicians that keep getting reelected when they have not delivered or improved healthcare, education, any of those things, not to mention the governor.
It's complicated.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it's like popularity. Oh, this is a name we know, so I'm just going to vote for him, as opposed to voting for Joe Smith, who nobody's heard of before.
Yeah.
And what's
Like-
weird, our state is the whole state's what, 1.6 million people, to where one little city in New York has 3.5 million. I mean, we should be able to take care of our people.
Yeah.
We don't have any big cities that are like driving those policies. Like West Virginia, our biggest city is like probably Charleston and Morgantown.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it's the way that our state works politically is so different than other states, and we have a big history of corruption where like these politicians, like even our governor right now, he's not in it for West Virginians, he's in it for Jim Justice.
Oh, yeah.
And he does everything, he doesn't even pay his own income taxes. Like, I'm not even kidding you,
Yeah.
man. Like, I was shocked he got reelected. I was like,
Well, Manchin supported him as a Democrat, and then he switched to a Republican.
The
Yeah.
last time we had an election, I made a note if he was an incumbent, and I voted for whoever was. And I just went down the list and said, "Are you currently in West Virginia?" Yep. Okay, voting for the other guy.
I did
because
too.
So bad.
Like, and he was close. That Ben, he was close.
Yeah.
Like,
And we haven't even gotten into, you have high rates of cancer in certain areas where coal was predominant.
yeah.
Water contamination. I've seen pretty horrific videos from some streams of water. There's a lot of health problems with people in West Virginia, including some areas that are, high cancer rates.
Coming from a bigger city, like I understand. Like, I don't understand why these people aren't willing to change, but at the same time, I understand they grew up with coal, and they you were pushed to the coal mines. So a lot of these men that are working in the coal mines, that's all they know.
Right.
And I kind of feel like they're stuck, and they don't realize, like, you can't go back to school. You can, but then you got to pay for school, and you got to get student loans. Like, it's just, unfortunately, it's a really big cycle. But if we could get rid of coal, like, I think, it would help the economy and health. I mean, your health is important. And again, it snowballs. If you get sick, you have your hospital bills, whatnot. You can't work. You can't support your family. Like,
Well, we have big reasons to have big hospital bills here because we have certificate of need laws in West Virginia, which means that like WV Medicine has to sign off on having anyone come in and compete with them. So we don't get access to fair health care here. And like our whole attitude in West Virginia towards environment, like we live outside of the city limits here, and the same provider that provides recycling inside the city limits doesn't where we live. They won't do recycling for people in the county. So if we want to recycle, there's one recycling station in the entire area, and we have to go only during like a certain like 3-hour window on a weekday during working hours. And it's always filled to the brim full of stuff, and you'll get fined if you leave it there and don't put it inside the big dumpster things they have. So it's like prohibitive. You can't really recycle effectively here if you live outside city limits. And that's like pretty typical of West Virginia, that like just the attitude towards it and the accessibility is not there.
And you also were talking about corruption. I mean, the media doesn't really mention this. Joe Manchin is the chair of the Senate Energy Committee, and he owns a coal company. Mm-hmm. So he is the chair of the committee that regulates the environment, and he makes millions of dollars. The Intercept reported since he's been senator, he's made $5 million from his coal company. I mean, that's a blatant conflict of interest. You would think of that kind of stuff happening in like corrupt third world countries, but here, it's just no wonder.
It's the same thing with our governor, Jim Justice. He owes the state millions and millions of dollars in both fines, like environmental fines, and in income tax from his coal companies. Mm-hmm. He hasn't paid it. He's been governor for what, 6 years?
yeah.
He's like, I'm not. He's too entitled to pay it.
Right. Do you think as we obviously prices are really high right now, but have you seen any evidence that more people are organizing? I mean, I've seen groups. Some folks chain themselves to Manchin's plant. Some folks have gone to D.C.
Yeah.
There's the Poor People's Campaign, others. But have you seen? I mean, it's kind of hard to organize and protest if you're struggling to just.
You can't
Yeah.
afford gas to protest. Like, and people have to work. They can't take time off of work to go and organize that way. And in West Virginia, there's so much infighting. Like, it's hard to get anybody to agree on anything because everybody is I will just say, if you go and look at the news articles on West Virginia lately, there have been so many mental health issues and incidents. People with firearms on highways, getting out of their car and threatening other people that are driving. There's been 2 or 3 incidents of that just in the last month or two. And the mental health, like mental health here, if you try to get in, I tried to get in for therapy. There's waiting lists that are a year long here in West Virginia. You just there's not accessibility to it. So it's hard to get anybody organized because they're all so divided and they're so frustrated and just struggling. I don't know. It'd be nice to see that, but I don't see it happening anytime soon.
As we try to wrap up here, you get 3 minutes with the governor, 3 minutes with Biden. What's your message?
Oh my gosh. I don't even know, because as a parent, there's so many things that go through your head. I want happy and healthy children. I want educated children. I want, my community be safe for my children. Figure out something so that we can live life happily, which involves money,
I would say please give us the child tax credit back. Please give us educational choice. Please listen to what your constituents are saying and stop just acting in your own interests.
Mm-hmm. And I'd say, take away the please. I'd use a couple of letters that I won't say now. Because people need to get angry. I'm not talking about being violent.
Yeah.
I think too many people have gotten kind of accepted a government that's corrupt. I call it the United Corporations of America. Accepted that our politicians are millionaires and billionaires. Forget term limits. How about a cap on money and wealth? How do you expect people that Nancy Pelosi shows pictures of her freezer that has gourmet ice cream to the brims? How do you expect those people to connect with your struggle?
I want other people to start looking for, running and voting for younger people, because all of these people are in their geriatrics in their 70s and 80s. Our president is almost 90, for goodness sake. And if we could have some more younger people who actually currently have families and are experiencing this, that can vote for policies that are family friendly, I think that would help a lot.
Right.
But in order to get there, we have to have people run, and then we have to have people that vote for them. And unfortunately, our generation is smaller than the bigger generations that came before us, and so our voices are not heard as much.
Yeah. Thank you guys for taking the time, Katie and Melanie. We are headed to Charleston next on this road trip. After that, I think Fayette County. After that, I think Huntington. So we got a lot. Speaking of gas, let me tell you, spent a lot of money spent on gas on this trip. So if I missed any super chats, thank you for the super chats. Let me read. I did not read it yesterday, so I want to read. We got a couple new people signing up as members to Status Coup, which we definitely need your support. That's how we fund these reporting trips. Welcome Imran signed up today. Welcome Lance and Brad yesterday. And the day before, John, Jason, Jesse, H, Megan, and Sasha signed up. So thank you for signing up. If you are on the fence, obviously we're talking about economic struggle. So if you don't have that extra $5 a month, we get it. But if you do have, $5 to $10 a month, this is what it's going to. I do not see CNN in folks' living rooms talking to them and telling the real stories. I do not see CNN doing what we did yesterday. We went to 2 homeless encampments in Akron. That's another thing. Homelessness is exploding in not just major cities, but even rural areas. So we interviewed a homeless woman, which is up on the channel, and her story is heartbreaking. And these are not like the stereotype of homeless people. A lot of these folks just look like you and I and are working people that recently got evicted and had nowhere else to go. So if you can support us, statuscoup.com/join, statuscoup.com/join. You can become a member for $5 to $10 a month, and you get access to our monthly Zoom call on Zoom, which we're going to do when we get back. You get to join our members Discord and behind-the-scenes videos from the road, which we've posted a couple videos for members, kind of showing you the behind-the-scenes of these road trips. Later today we'll be in Charleston. we'll be talking to an activist who has had a couple run-ins with President Manchin. So we'll be focusing on Mr. Manchin later and more stories of folks in West Virginia. And the next few days, we're kind of lining some other things up. Make sure you're signed up for our text message list so you'll get a text message when we're live. StatusCoup.com/text. StatusCoup.com/text. It's free to sign up. We only text you when we're live, so we won't bother you other than when we're live. And also share these videos. Share them with friends, family, even your Republican uncle or your Democratic aunt. You'd be surprised. You would think some people don't. I show this stuff to Republicans I know. Their first question is, why isn't the media covering this? So you'd be surprised. It's not only lefties or progressives who care about these topics. Everybody cares about, gas and food and electricity and corruption. We get divided on social issues, but on economics, most people think the same way and have the same struggles. So definitely support us. We're also sharing clips on Twitter, so that's @StatusCoup. Some of this we'll cut up and put up on Twitter. So thank you for watching. Again, we'll be live later. What time is it? We'll probably be live after 6 o'clock Eastern, so that's 3 o'clock Pacific. So after 6 o'clock Eastern, we'll be live again.